You've been pretty busy since leaving Canopy Growth since July.
Well, thank you for calling it leaving. That's very nice. It's like
I know,
it's like getting thrown out of a bar and somebody say you chose to the left. But yeah, I get it.
You said you've qualified it as fired from Canopy Growth, but as part of your firing departure, you signed a non-compete clause preventing you from working with Canadian cannabis companies.
Correct.
So you're now working with American cannabis companies.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about how you adapt to working for a U.S. cannabis company when federal legalization is unlikely in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I'm not sure you're going to see federal legalization where they say everything everywhere is on, but I would be very surprised if by the end of 2020 you don't see something that's either states' rights, where they say whatever is going on in, New York State, whatever they've approved at the state level is fine. Maybe you'll see medically, nationally introduced. So. Working in the U.S., though, it comes down to the question is, what's the company up to? Are they focused on science? Are they doing clinically responsible things? So when you talk about Juul and the vape, part of the reason I was attracted to Vireo is it's like scientists that are adults with a medical degree start a cannabis business. And then when they issue vapes and sell them, they track them in a post-market surveillance basis for the last 4 years in at least 2 of the states to see did anyone have an adverse reaction. The reason I like that is if you have the data, you have a defensible position. Their data says they're safe in terms of there haven't been reported incidents for their products, which says to regulators what you should really do is regulate aggressively so people move to the controlled product, not try to ban them. And so that's the kind of thing I'm looking for, and I was very happy to find in Vireo.
Fascinating that they're monitoring. How are they monitoring the vapes once they're out in the open?
So what you do is you take a third party whose job is to take inputs and receive it, and you have a registration process so that if you have an adverse reaction reported to the company or follow-up checkups, it goes through and a third party holds the data. So this is just like if you introduced a new version of any other product that people would buy as a medical and or I'll call it over-the-shelf counter container consumer. And so what you end up with is a situation where they've been responsible. And when you do that in one thing, you know what they do in the other areas? They file patents. So they have 15 quite broad patents filed, and they have one that's issued. And the one that's issued sort of looks at how could you make smoking cigarettes and tobacco less dangerous. Really what I liked about it was it's intellectual property that can cause a conversation. So in my Canopy life, part of the reason I wanted to buy a company in the space, say of hair shampoo and face creams that was doing quite well called This Works, was that if you were then going to add CBD to it and you wanted to have a good conversation with a really big company, you had a bargaining chip. And so I think they've been very astute in creating bargaining chips. And so that's going to yield well over the next 3 or 4 quarters as we decide who we buy, how we finance, and where we accelerate.
Okay, so that's the plans for the company right now. You mentioned aggressive regulating. What's your read on what the FDA's thinking on vaping is? Because everyone's waiting for it to publish some kind of flavor guidance, right? Does it curb flavors, or does it allow menthol cartridges and pods and other possible flavors to stay in the market?
Well, it's a really tough spot. And the way I would look at it is whatever they disallow, they essentially say the criminals should provide. And so it's not that you can eliminate it. The question is, how do you actually enforce regulation at point of sale? And so I would hope what they do is they start to look at both the device and the flavoring. Because many of the devices are made in a way that the batteries in the flow line where it's very heated product and now you've got it flowing over a battery and you're bringing stuff in that I wouldn't think is a very sound approach. And then they should also really regulate what's in the tobacco and the cannabis CBD ones. And the reason they have to regulate is so you get CBD oil and you're vaping that. You say, well, it's only CBD. Well, no, it's not. Was the CBD harvested from crops that were regulated? Was there a spray applied to it? Are there other things in it? So I think the regulators have to go from the field to the device and don't ban, but really enforce regulations that say maybe they limit flavor for a while. But the worst thing they'll do is say, we're not allowing it, because that's just, the criminals say, thank you.
You leave it for everyone else.
Oh, yeah. Listen, prohibition, I think we've proven, is a very ineffective tool. At least in the countries I work in, and it's about 16 of them, every time that they've prohibited it, and then they start rolling it back, and I meet someone who's upset, I said, well, the only reason you could be upset is presumably you're a criminal or someone in your family is a criminal, because the only people who lose money under a regulated environment are the criminal aspects. And so hopefully on vapes, they don't cede it to them.
Let's talk about where you've gone now. Vireo, of course, Executive Chairman. You've already got the branding on your T-shirt. You sprinkle fairy dust wherever you go, Bruce. You've got a huge pop in the share price of Vireo the minute that they announced you coming on as Executive Chairman. You've also been lending your name to Better Choice, CBD, animal pet food. That's going to be your special advisor there. How do you ensure that this remarkable move, the light that you shine on these businesses actually shows up in their performance and what you hope to bring to the companies?
So I first made a grid. I want to be able to see what happens to four-legged mammals. I want to be in a single state operator, a multi-state operator, and I made my grid and I filled it in. And then I made a deal with everybody in the company. I said, guys, good, I'm going to join, but nobody sells stock for the next year in the key players. So
no insider selling.
Right. If you're a key player, don't sell. And I hope the stock pops the first day because you'll go, oh, I like that. And then what you got to do is say, I really like that. I better work hard tomorrow and the next day. And before you know it, the stock's way better off. And you've gotten used to working hard and not selling. And so it was kind of like one of those terms I dropped in at the end because I'm not selling and I don't want to stand around and have nobody with me. And so I think that's a first step towards succeeding and creating value is you need to stay with your stock if you're inside working.
Does it make you quite smug that you get these share price reactions and you were fired?
It's the first time I've actually been popular, so I'm fond of that. But I think the reason I'm popular is I try to structure it so that people who invest don't have to look at it every day and trade it every day.
Yeah.
What they have to decide is, did it pop and will it drop and should I buy a bit more later? But when you're going to have a conversation about what are the 3 MSOs that you have to own in the event that the U.S. election results in some kind of change to the regulatory framework, Vireo is going to be there. And that's the point of the exercise.